really a draft. I mean, I haven't really picked through it very well.
That's okay. I had very little time. What I've had generally is had at least a couple of extra hours during a week to at least go in and make some edits. But because we lost a day for Veterans Day, really all I added was those sort of highlighted questions. So here we are, section says 13, but I think it's actually 14. I'll just make that. Here we go. So again, we'll go section by section, stop for comments in between each section, and then sort of discuss it more fully. Education in Thompson, a historical foundation. The town of Thompson has a rich history in supporting public education that dates back over 100 years. The impressive architecture of the original Tortolot Memorial High School proudly stands on the top of the highest peak in North Grosvenor-Dale. The now retired high school building serves as a long-standing reminder of the importance of educating the youth in Thompson.
You want us to stop you? You want us to stop you?
Go, anytime, Joe, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, you can fix any of that.
Well, we go back almost 300 years. I'm sorry about that part, but we had education. The question is, when do you start the education?
Well, 1735, didn't we start with the parish schools?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So that's the question is, what do we want to say? Supporting public education at the high school level over 100 years. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that would be my first changes. If you want to say high school over 100 years, and at the grammar school level since the 1730s. And I think we put those two comments in, you'll be all right. The other one is Marionopolis. If we did further on down, if we did want to talk about other current schools, I did send you a paragraph on that, Kira.
Did you just send it? Because I hadn't received anything from you.
Yes, I sent it. It was hung up in my email, but you have it now.
Okay, very good. So, yeah, and that was a point I was going to raise later is, what role do we want to include for the private schools? I mean, the document is a municipal document, but I would say that Marionopolis has a pretty high profile within the community. What does that mean in context? So we can talk about that a little later as well. So good point, Joe. The now retired high school building serves as a longstanding reminder of the importance of educating the youth in Thompson. The community is forever in. Go.
I didn't know if that should say of or in.
It would be of grammatically. That's an easy one for me to fix anyway. The community is forever indebted to Dr. Jacob Francis Tortolot and his wife, Mrs. Harriet Arnold Tortolot, for providing the town with a free, state-of-the-art secondary educational facility. The Tortolots also left behind an extraordinary museum filled with artifacts that memorialize their lives. A 7-member board of trustees manages and maintains the building in compliance with the wishes of the Tortolot family. This amazing couple had the foresight to set aside funds that have been carefully invested over time to support the academic and enrichment curricula and to keep the property and the museum in pristine condition for the citizens of Thompson to enjoy for years to come. So just as a general comment on the history, I would say the important part about bringing the history into it is setting up a culture of education. And we discussed this in some other earlier sections where we had very briefly discussed history, and then Joe I had flushed more out for us, because history is always unique to the place where you live, right? So if we establish that the community has placed value on education for its children since the beginning, it creates a continuum. So that's just a general comment. Joe, I don't know, that's sort of a setup for you, actually.
Yeah, I mean, you said it very well.
Okay.
All right, so maybe we'll try to flush that out a little more. Now, being the outsider, I don't have that history. Joe, in the paragraph that you sent me, is that just in regards to Marionopolis, or is that more of the fuller educational background?
It was essentially just talking about that we had public and we also had private. We currently have private in the Marianapolis school.
So to the first paragraph, we're going to add that our education goes back to the 1700s in the primary schools. And then we're going to add Joe's piece of Marianapolis. We have private schools in Marianapolis now.
Yeah, and I'm assuming,
yeah.
Terry, you're going to make those
Unfortunately, we don't have
adjustments.
St. Joe's anymore, but
Yes, Melinda, to answer your question, the additional text is stuff that I'll mostly drafted myself, but obviously based on whatever Joe or anybody else sends to me in terms of the background.
No worries. That's good news.
All right. Again, setting you up here, Joe, we do reference the trust in the second paragraph. It's a pretty unique arrangement that probably deserves some fuller treatment. And again, you're probably in the best position to discuss the roles and responsibility of the trust. We can come back to that later, but that's just, I guess, a thought point.
I thought the paragraph summarized it nicely.
Okay. All right. If you think this is sufficient, I'm fine with the way it is as well then. On education and technology. Thompson's public schools are uniquely situated on one school campus in the center of North Grosvenor-Dale. The school system consists of 3 schools: Tortolot Memorial High School, Thompson Middle School, and Mary R. Fisher Elementary School. Enrollment as of October 1st, 2020 is a total of 958 students attending Thompson Public Schools. I'm just going to make that clear that that's all public schools. The district's 5-year data trend indicates that enrollment numbers have been stable. However, this school year, 2020 to 2021, may be an anomaly due to the COVID pandemic impact. I had a question about that, partly about the phrasing, but also the statistic itself. So we've been stable, Melinda, for looks like roughly 5 years, give or take, which would actually make this year not anomalous. But on 10-year trends, if I went back to the 2009-2010 school year, there was quite a dip. Of course, I don't have it in front of me, but as I recall, it was somewhere up around 20%.
Yes, it was from 5 years. I only did a 5-year trend. I didn't know if you wanted to go back 10 years.
We don't need a graph, I don't think, but I do have, some of the state report card stuff pulled off the Department of Ed website.
Yep.
yeah.
The reason to mention it, I think, and you can tell me what you guys think, because it's obviously it's your bailiwick. We've made some pretty strong arguments throughout the document, trying to get people accustomed to the idea of increasing density for the community overall. And in the context of education, I know that one of the arguments that comes up, and it's a frustrating one, it's 2 arguments that I've heard people make against the school budget. They contradict one another and they drive me crazy. One is that the cost per student is so high, and then in the very next breath, those same people will often say, but we can't have more students. Whereas if you have more students, it seems to me that the natural thing is that amortizes the costs down up to a point, right?
Yeah.
At which, until you reach the point where you're fully utilizing the service, at which point, yes, adding students would drive costs up. But
Well,
you can't
it's not
possibly tell me that. Go ahead.
Two variables that you need to consider that have changed over the last 10 years, which has a significant impact on the cost of educating students, is that your poverty rates for the families have gone way up, and special education, the needs of special education students, we have more special education students than we've ever had before. So those 2 variables are having a significant impact on that per pupil cost.
the special ed rates, I would assume, are a trend statewide, not just within Thompson?
Maybe so.
Or do you think that's more unique to Thompson?
I think the escalation is more unique to Thompson, although obviously nationally we are identifying more students with disabilities for whatever the reason.
Yeah, I guess that was the point I was making. Is it that the metric has changed for what assesses a student as a special ed student? Are we capturing more students informationally? And that therefore the trend is in all districts for special education needs to rise?
Perhaps. I'm just saying it's one of those drivers that is impacting the per pupil cost.
Right. Okay. All right. So that brings back to that conflict point. Like I've been saying, we've been making the case throughout that an increase in density is good for the tax base. It's good for a lot of things within the community. The sticking point is some people make that argument against an argument against raising density based on the school. I want to know if that bears out to your thinking. The logic of it, to me, suggests that it should not bear out, that until the resources are fully utilized, it doesn't amortize up, it amortizes down.
Yeah.
In a different conversation, Terry, you'll remember in one of these other meetings, we talked about that there is a cost of operating a facility, and that if the building is 20% utilized or 60% or 80% utilized, it matters greatly. And so what I think really need to talk about is that there is excess capacity at the school. If we overstate that too much, it hurts us. If we understate it, it also hurts us. So we have to strike a good balance in that conversation.
I mean, and maybe this isn't a question that you can answer, Melinda. You know, maybe it's too sort of cut and dry left brain. But is there an ideal student population density that you guys have as a target for numbers of students to serve? Like where you think you'd like to be?
Well, we'd obviously like to be where we were at 10 years ago, where the facility was expanded to accommodate those children. However, across Connecticut, enrollment decreased in almost every district. It's swinging a little bit up because of the people fleeing out of New York on the other side of the state. But for the most part, you know, our goal really is to keep as many students as we can attending Thompson, you know, Turtle Up Memorial High School. And we've managed to do that this year. We've kept more 8th graders being retained at the high school, but that number fluctuates back and forth. And Kathleen would know that better than anyone else. She's been watching those numbers for years.
Mm. Yeah, we managed.
What's your sense? Go ahead, Kathleen.
Yeah, well, what were you going to say, Tyra?
I was just curious if you knew what percentage of school-age children in Thompson actually attend the public schools versus private. Is that information you have access to? Yeah,
we do. We monitor that number. I couldn't give you right off the top of my head what that number is, but we do watch the number of 8th grade. We do have somewhat that number of, we have the number of 8th graders that leave our school to go to the Killingly BOAG program, students that leave the 8th grade to go to Ellis Tech, say, and typically it's around the 26% to 30% of our 8th graders leave to go on to Ellis and or other high schools. This year, we only lost 20% of our students. One year, it was as high as 50%. Almost 50% of our students left, and that was about 5 years ago. We lost 50% of our 8th grade students to go on to other schools.
So it's typically at the 8th grade, middle school to high school level that
Yeah,
the transition happens?
That's where we
Yes.
lose our students, yes.
Yep.
There are, this year, as Melinda says, it's an anomaly. We don't actually have the actual number of homeschooled students. Typically, it's around, because parents are supposed to tell us when they're homeschooling their children, but Connecticut is not very rigid on enforcing that, which I don't understand, but they're not. And we also have that number for prior years that we know of, and it's been around 20 to the 25, 27 students that are homeschooled in Thompson. This year, correct me if I'm wrong, you said it was around 50 something students are being homeschooled this year.
Yes, so far.
So far this year, and we believe that's because of the COVID. That means they're not distance learning. 22% of our students have chosen to distance learn, but they're included in that 958 number because they are officially attending school. They're just attending from home.
Right.
Okay.
All right, so just to stay on the topic for one more second, in that, let's call it an average of 25% over the last 5 years that abscond in the 8th grade. Do you have a sense of, well, you have some sense of who's homeschooled. Is it predominantly that they are going to homeschooling and the tech school options, or is there a significant number that, for example, goes to Marianapolis or other private prep school environments?
No, most of them are going to Ellis.
Yes.
Okay.
She's right.
Most go to Ellis.
All right. So
That's
I think that's
one of the
what I'm making
reasons
of that.
we created our manufacturing pathway.
I already put that. Okay. The profile of the student population has been slowly changing and becoming more diverse as new families join the schools. Here's your demographics. This actually reflects better than the community demographics at large, which is interesting. The Caucasian population of the town at large is up around 95, 97%. So this is an interesting disparity there. And virtually no demographics identifying Latinx population. It almost all comes in under other when you look at the town. That's just an aside.
Well, you got to remember that some of these kids are adopted.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, you
Good
got to
point.
remember that other mixed are adopted.
Poverty rates have steadily increased over the last 5 years, as indicated by the district's free and reduced lunch data. To be eligible for federal meal programs, a family of 4 must have a combined income at or below $34,060. More than half the students at Mary R. Fisher Elementary School meet the criteria for free breakfast and lunch. Here is your statistical illustration. Anything that anybody wants to comment on either of these data sets, relevance, how to incorporate it, what we want to say? Does anything strike anybody as missing or needing to be fleshed out more? Moving on. Board of Education, roles, responsibility, and advocacy. The members of the Thompson Board of Education are committed to an educational program that will enable children to develop skills necessary for them to become responsible adults, functioning in and contributing to an ever-changing democratic society. Therefore, we offer an educational program that provides each child with the opportunity to acquire fundamental life skills and knowledge and understanding about our social, scientific, technological, political, and cultural world. We respect students' special rates and styles of learning and their maturational patterns. We are sensitive to children's social, emotional, intellectual, and physical needs at each stage of their development. We have high performance expectations for students. As a result, our children will have the opportunity to become self-aware, self-reliant, and self-confident. We believe that education is a lifelong process. With this in mind, our programs will offer Thompson children coordinated and adaptable studies and activities reasonably designed to meet the needs at this time in their lives and provide a foundation to support a lifetime of future learning.
That is the Board of Tara, that is the Board of Education's philosophy statement from their policies.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is a publicly available statement as is.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Making my marginal notes here. All right, vision statement. And these are mostly the data points or the bullet points that Kathleen sent me.
Mm-hmm.
You can see I did have some questions that they prompted, which I'd like to use for discussion, either as we're reading it now or when we circle back. The vision statement, the Thompson Public Schools will be the highest performing public school system in Northeast Connecticut.
Mm-hmm. That's our vision.
Mission.
Someday. And,
Mission statement. Go ahead, Kathleen.
well, okay. Now I haven't had a chance, but I do want to look at, and I've started to look up the data. Now we said Northeast Connecticut. Now I know niche, and I started to look this up, and I just want to, I realize that we're an alliance district, so therefore we're an underperforming district, as per the definition of alliance district, and we're taking steps to improve that. And we have narrowed it to Northeast. So I want to look at the ratings of the other Northeast Connecticut, which I will define, and see where we stand against our surrounding towns of Northeast Connecticut.
Okay.
All right. And I will get back, and I want to get back to that. I realize we will never achieve Greenwich, Fairfield, Stamford. We're never going to achieve that, or even possibly Woodstock. You know, I'd like to say we would be Woodstock, but we're competing against the academy there. We don't have their resources because of, yeah, well, we don't have their foundation. We don't have their, you know, their funding, their private funding. We will never have that funding.
Right.
We don't have their endowment fund is what I'm trying to say.
Right. Oh, I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you. All right. Mission statement. To this end, the Thompson Board of Education is committed to ensuring that every student is prepared for success in life in the 21st century. So we'll deal with the highlighted questions after. We'll just read through now. This will be accomplished by providing dedicated leadership, encouraging community involvement and support, hiring and retaining engaged, enthusiastic, focused, and professional staff, providing state-of-the-art instruction, maintaining a safe and caring environment that fosters lifelong learning, embracing our differences, and striving to help every student reach their greatest potential.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again here, and these are just the questions that I thought were sort of naturally prompted by these statements.
Okay.
So, you know, just right in order. What does dedicated leadership look like? So we've established terms, but we haven't defined them. And to me, the value of this document throughout is that it is an aspirational document where we can say over the next 10 years, we want to take these steps to accomplish these goals. It's not regulatory, nothing is mandatory or binding, but by having it here, it gives everybody in the community a chance to look sort of under the tablecloth of every one of these aspects, all in one place. So providing that unified vision. So Melinda, I'll toss that to you. What does dedicated leadership look like in your mind as superintendent of schools?
Well, that we have some longevity with our administrative team, that, you know, they're focused and are dedicated to improving student achievement. We don't have a lot of turnover in our leadership team. And leadership starts not only from the administrators, right, but even our teachers. So, you know, I wasn't here when they developed these statements, but, and I'm sure Kathleen knows what the underpinnings of that, of these statements were, but to me, that's what it means.
Actually, I
Okay,
should-
so again, so these are older statements from a Board of Ed.
let me
Compendium?
explain, Tara, when we were preparing to hire a superintendent, we engaged a consulting firm. And the first thing we did prior to actually hiring, we got together as a group, the hiring committee got together as a group and created the vision statement and this mission statement, so that we were prepared to go out and find a superintendent that would meet our needs and our goals and our mission statement. These are actually our goals for the school. And we ended up hiring Melinda, whose vision and missions would fit. So we spent several weeks going over this. I have to dig out my notes prior to hire, you know, when we sat down and we worked through this first prior to going out and interviewing people
But
for
if you,
what would be for the superintendent's position.
if you want me to work on answering these questions, I can take a shot at it.
Yeah, but
Yeah, I mean, some of that can come out of this discussion. I mean, that is definitely why we have these discussion groups,
Mhm.
is to try to tease out what it is that we are trying to say. So some of that can happen here, and some of that can come from Kathleen and the board, or Melinda, you know, over the next couple of weeks before I have to finalize this draft.
Okay.
You know, this is an opportunity to state what you really mean and how you mean to go about your process. It's an entirely positive way to sort of make your aspirations plain, is how I would think of it.
Okay.
Okay.
It's been a while, but I'll try to remember what we, in fact, I'll go see if I still have my notes on these things too. That would help.
I would even, you know, suggest that obviously look at your notes, because that was when you were thinking about it in a concentrated fashion. But Melinda is, of course, here now.
Yeah.
So to look at these bullet point items and say, okay, we want a dedicated leadership. This is how we have come to determine, this is what we have determined now that it means in the context of having the superintendent whom we brought in, with whom we are very happy. You know, we see that dedicated leadership means providing this kind of programming or doing this kind of outreach. I mean, you know, I'm out of my bailiwick there. I don't know what the daily processes are in terms of the education world, the way I would of, you know, something involving land use, right?
So if we want a fresh set of eyes looking at this, I can work through that over the next couple of days and send it to Kathleen and let her look at it against her notes.
Yeah, that would help. Or should we, or maybe we should call we have a goals committee. Maybe we should call a special meeting of the goals. After you do that, we could call a special meeting of the goals committee to look at it.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, we're all Zoom now anyway.
Yeah, and if it's a date that I can make, I'd be happy to come in on that, or not, as you're more comfortable, Kathleen. Either way is fine with me.
Okay.
I can take it from you afterwards or be a part of the discussion.
Okay.
again, I'm the outsider here. I'm just trying to sort of get this to the point where we have a super robust document that that's going to serve the whole community well.
All right.
Kira, could I throw a couple of comments before we move to the next section? If you
Of
don't
course,
mind?
my friend.
Thank you. The topics in the other sections, we've used one thought process, which was we're considering this sort of an advertising piece for people to want to come to Thompson. When they come to Thompson, they might find this situation or that situation. So if we take that, it's not the only perspective of this. One is to talk about what it is today, but also the other one is what is compelling about the area. So there's 4 things I think we should consider if you're rewriting the mission statement or adding more to the mission statement. And let's not underplay the connections to the other groups. So you've got Ellis Tech. We talk about the purpose of education here in Thompson is not just everything that we do on the ground in Thompson, but the connections that we have to the VOAG program, the Ellis Tech program, the fact that there's a tight connection to QVCC, where you can graduate high school and have an associate's degree with QVCC as well, which guarantees you enrollment to UConn if you go through that program. All of these things are Thompson board organized. So it just doesn't have to be this facilities. It can be the expanded education. We also have 18 degree granting institutions within 35 miles of Thompson, and we've had very good success working to put students in those 18 organizations. I think the fact that we are very well situated with degree granting institutions this close to our place is probably worthy of a sentence.
Okay.
And it is a point, Joe, that we've made in other contexts too, our proximity to Boston, Providence, Worcester, Hartford. Actually, our proximity is worse to Hartford than it is to any of those other places, but the point is the same. The proximity is high to some of the centers of education. I mean,
Right.
where is more of a center of education than Boston, Massachusetts?
Sure.
Not even New York.
No, you've got it. You certainly have it. And even Worcester has quite a reputation for the number of colleges that they have. So, and Providence, Worcester, Providence, highly.
So a piece that comes out of that prompt is, in addition to the proximity, how do we develop relationships that are not necessarily just student to academy? How do we position these schools in terms of looking towards these educational hubs? I know I went to a public high school that was a borderline private school, right? It was, super wealthy community. Everybody goes to college, and the outreach from the schools to the surrounding colleges via guidance or whatever other series of programs was always very high, or seemed very high to me as a student. And I assume that hasn't changed. So what are our outreach opportunities, I guess, is what my long-winded way of saying that.
From Turtelot, there's articulation agreements with many colleges. So kids are getting college credit while attending Turtelot, but I don't know, the other private schools, what that outreach is.
Joe Perotti, you want to hop in on that at all? A little perspective from the Marianapolis side? He's gone.
Yeah.
Oh, there he is. Joe, are you still in? He's on my screen. I wonder if he's having problems with it.
Hi, yeah, sorry. Could you, sorry, I've been sort of in and out. Could you repeat the question?
Well, we were sort of getting a little tangential, talking about outreach from the high school level to colleges, how that's effectively done. What's the mechanism? What's the connection? Who does it well? Who does it not well? I assume that Marianapolis, being a private school, has quite a bit of collegiate outreach that they do. I'm curious about your perspective on that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So we've got a whole outfit, an office. That's their whole raison d'etre, as they say. So we've been, so it's getting the representatives here when they can, and working with the kids to really think about the best schools for them as well. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely, like so many things, right, a question of resources, right? We've got some resources to dedicate that specifically for our students. Whereas I know that's just one part of, what a guidance counselor might be doing at Turtle, for example.
One way to think about that is to consider that the cost of education is so high. You have many students who are commuting now to the university or college levels. And I think the proximity is really critical. I know 2 of my 3 children did that, commuting from home, just trying to help dear old dad keep costs down. So I think that's not a minor point. We need to emphasize there's a lot of choice for those who do stay home.
Yeah, that's a good point, Joe.
Yep.
Well, your kids were generous. I left my house the second that I graduated high school and pretty much never looked back.
Yeah.
You couldn't actually have paid me to live in my family's house a day afterwards.
Oh, you wild woman. You wanted to live
Well,
life, right?
It was the 80s. It was a different time.
By the
All
early 70s.
Oh, that was a very different time.
Very different time, yeah.
Okay, moving on. District commitments: create multiple academic pathways, revise curriculum with state and federal standards, invest in technology to meet the educational needs of all of our students, establish an environment of engagement, collaboration, and community involvement, improve facilities to meet the needs of all our students, hire, train, and retain high-quality professional staff, develop fiscally efficient and accountable budgets that maximize resources. And again, I have my general comment here, which is examples of these, both for illustrative purposes here, I think would be helpful. Like, what do these things mean to a casual reader of this document? And create multiple academic pathways. What does that mean to maybe somebody who finds this document who's considering moving here? Although I think this is probably more of a document for developers and municipalities, but even so, it's out there, right? It's a series of statements. What makes it useful for somebody considering Thompson and Thompson Public Schools to see those statements? And the other things I would say is at the end of each section, we are positing action steps. So this would be where I would say maybe you want to get some of your action steps that come back to these commitments. Were you going to say something, Melinda?
Yeah, I was just going to say that this section's easy to pull together.
Okay. Portrait of a graduate. With technical support from the Connecticut Center for School Change and the Connecticut Association of Public School Superintendents, Thompson Public Schools have completed a comprehensive study which engaged the community to determine the essential skills and competencies all students should possess upon graduation. The process began with a core group of school leaders who attended several training sessions sponsored by the organizations mentioned above. This professional learning guided the process of Thompson's Public Schools' Portrait of a Graduate, POG. Data collected from stakeholders was analyzed, which resulted in a district Portrait of a Graduate statement. A Thompson graduate is independent, knowledgeable, and community connected. Oh, I didn't even realize that this is the logo for it.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm actually gonna move that down so that so that you have the words and the logo together. Okay, that's a note for me. Move down. The district organized sessions and met with a variety of stakeholder groups. I would identify some of those various groups, Melinda, so we have a sense of the breadth of it. Breadth of groups involved. In all, over 500 Thompson citizens participated in the development of the attributes associated with the Portrait of a Graduate statement. And here they are. The Thompson graduate is knowledgeable, meaning academically accomplished, skilled at critical thinking, adept at problem solving, financially literate, appreciative of the arts, and aware of other languages and cultures. The Thompson graduate is independent, driven toward physical and emotional wellness, effective with communication, proficient with interpersonal interactions, organized, successful with time management, equipped with a strong work ethic, and confident. And the Thompson graduate is community connected, anchored in the values of kindness, honesty, respect, and empathy, ready to lead authentically, service-oriented, appreciative of local history, and civic-minded. Somebody trying to come in? Joe came out. Okay. Educators and members of the Board of Education are in the process of creating a POG implementation plan. The plan will address the following goals. The Portrait of a Graduate will be widely known, understood, and valued by the Thompson Public Schools and the community they serve. The curriculum will be aligned with the Portrait of a Graduate. The curriculum will be delivered using high-quality instruction that aligns with research and best practices, and district operations and resources will be mobilized and prioritized to create focus and support on the implementation of the Portrait of a Graduate. Do you guys have a sense of when you're going to have your final rollout on that?
So we just started that, and these 4 bullets are going to take 2 to 3 years to complete.
Okay, so this is a long-range
Correct.
development process.
Mhm.
Okay, so that can get into the action steps as well. Development. Implementation plan.
So then, from what's left, I kind of didn't know where to go, Tara. So bear with me for the rest of it.
That's okay. We're all doing this for the first time, Melissa.
Okay.
All right. Just before we move on to that next, so that's a 2 to 3 year plan development. What about nearer term goals within this initiative? What's in your next year phase? What are the small things that put it in the culture?
Yeah, the small things are going to be actually having the community understand. So there is a PR campaign now that we're going to be rolling out to get the Portrait of a Graduate out to the community. And, it's through mailers, through brochures, radio spots on Winnie. I can't think of what else. Oh, some parent forums or community forums to just roll out the whole idea of the Portrait of a Graduate, and to go back really to those stakeholder groups who were invested so much time and show them the end product of their hard work. So that's really the goal for this year. And then we are starting to work on aligning the curriculum with Portrait of a Graduate, but that's we're in the initial phases. I had a meeting today. We're in the process of developing a curriculum cycle that's going to align with the POG.
Okay, cool. All right. Moving on. Anybody else have anything on this? I think most of the people on this call were in at least one of the stakeholder groups. Any impressions that they want to, or observations they want to make about that process as somebody coming in from outside? Amy, how about you? You've been quiet.
I am always quiet. I just take everything in.
Well, I mean, this is an opportunity, as a person who participated in one of those workshops, I think to provide your impressions. I mean, whether they land in the document or not, in some sense, it says an outsider because you don't have kids in the system anymore. I mean,
Hi, sweetie. Hi, sweetie. How are you? How are you? Oh, cookie. Did you want a cookie? Okay.
where did I go? Here we are. Okay, moving on. Challenge. Somebody have something? I'm sorry, did I just? Oh no, that's just feedback. Okay. Why am I getting feedback? Challenges to education. Rising costs of education are having a significant impact on the Board of Education's budget each year. Thompson does not have a solid business tax base. Therefore, the burden to provide funds to support the schools is placed primarily on the local homeowner. Taxpayers have repeatedly voted down the school district's budget, resulting in annual reductions that do not meet the increasing needs of the student population.
So I'm not sure you want to keep that.
I was just
Well,
saying.
I am noted in all of these discussion sessions, Melinda, for saying take the candy wrapper off when you have to and lay it out there. If we're going to say that we have challenges, we should say what those challenges are. The important thing is, though, to then posit either solutions or workarounds or arguments to get around the objection. You can't have an honest discussion of how you want to improve unless you say what those improvements are going to be, and that's community improvement and district improvement, I would say. That doesn't mean this can't be phrased in a different way.
Correct.
But
Something
I
a little
think
more
we have
palatable.
Yeah.
You can see my anxiety coming through there.
Well, and I don't blame you, Melinda. I mean, I'm always inclined to meet these things sort of head on. I think part of it is that we've got to make the argument about, for example, that the increase in density that people use as an argument against the school is largely a false argument. That increasing enrollment is beneficial to the school and the students. I think that argument has to be disarmed sort of once and for all.
Well, to a certain extent. I think in Joe's, to talk to Joe's argument, to a certain extent, you have to fully utilize the fixed cost. And in our case, the fixed cost are fully utilizing the building capacity. But we have, we're underutilizing, well, not in today's world because of the pandemic, but the pandemic is eventually going to go away. And we have smaller classrooms sizes than are typically in a school. We can have classroom sizes.
Well, having a key
one teacher, we have a lot of school space that isn't being used to its greatest maximization to get economies of scale. I mean, that school is built for 1,400 to 1,600 students, and we're way underutilizing that space.
Okay, that's important to know what the actual student capacity is, because if we're going to make the case that we are underutilized, we should be able to demonstrate how underutilized it is.
Now we have reduced staff to be over the years because of our declining enrollment. So where we are currently staffed is not where we would staff if we had 1,500 students in the school, Tara.
Right, right. So it's not a one-to-one relationship exactly,
No,
but there is still an economy of scale, as you suggest.
correct.
Yeah.
We would have to hire some more teachers, but there are classrooms sitting there empty that are not being utilized.
They are this year,
Well, yes, they are this year because we have to social
spread
distance.
out.
Yes, but normally they would be, in normal years, they were, or whatever will be normal again, they would not have been used, but we're still heating them.
We
So-
are using the Bradley program, we're using some of that space by, allowing the alternative placement to be housed within the school. So that is I guess, an advantage.
Right, but we're doing everything we can to minimize cost of running the school at a lower capacity, but we can accommodate maybe not the 1,500 anymore that the school was built for, but we can accommodate at least 200 or 300 more students in that school.
For sure.
So one comment there is the challenges to education section. The title of that section, challenges. If you turn it around and we talk about the mitigation of it, what are we doing about it? One is St. Joe's is closed. You're going to get more students coming back into the school system. There may be other things that you can talk about. Tara, we've talked about this in other sections where if we're too negative in it, it's not helping us from the marketing side. So
Right.
I would think
Right.
the last sentence, the first, a paragraph, I think is harsh.
Hmm.
It's true, it's harsh and probably not helpful
Right.
No,
in the telling story.
No, I agree, but we're venting here. We're venting because.
Yeah, yeah, we're speaking frankly here so that we can turn it around into, as whoever said it, a palatable pill.
Yeah.
Tara, can
Yeah, and so that we, go ahead.
This is Amy St. Ange. In regard to that first paragraph, if we're discussing how taxpayers typically vote down the school district's budget, I think there's been this consensus amongst the Board of Ed, the Board of Finance, and even the Board of Selectmen that combining the two budgets once again, combining the town budget and combining the school budget is very likely to occur before the next budget is put before the voters. So that paragraph in itself may not even be applicable within the next year or two.
Let's
So
hope.
there'd be a good reason to eliminate that, even though it's truth, to potentially move forward and let's move into a positive place and believe that we're going to combine both budgets within the coming year. And
Okay, I will, I'll take that into account, Amy, as I'm reworking this. I still feel like there's probably something that needs to be addressed in there.
Well, first of all,
Even if, go ahead.
I don't think we need to emphasize that Thompson doesn't have a solid business base. And I think we need to just kind of, even though we know all of this is true, if you want to go from a marketing point, you don't want to say any of this. Because
Yeah, we've dealt with this same kind of, don't be so blunt issue in some other sections, and we've moved around it pretty well. So I'll apply that same lens here, but also keeping in mind that we may be combining budgets, which is going to sidestep some of this, but it isn't going to sidestep all of it. It may potentially present another challenge, of course, which is the whole thing could get, who knows? We don't know, but. Yeah, this is a phrasing and emphasis
we're working
thing.
on
So
it.
I'll work on that.
Yeah, the first selectman or select person here is working diligently on bringing new business into town. We've got a lot of good prospects out there of getting some businesses into town. And things are starting to happen in Thompson. So I don't know that that's, yeah, it's been true in the past and it's sad, but things are starting to happen. New housing, we're getting new people into town. So yes, kids will be coming to school somehow. So even though it falls on the taxpayers, there'll be more taxpayers to have it spread over. I think, I'm maybe have my rose-colored glasses on, but I think things are starting to pick up for Thompson.
Well, I think everybody who's on this call and this project feels the same way. I mean, that's what we're all working for.
Right.
But we still, we're going to address challenges in the framework of turning them into opportunities. So if this particular hurdle has changed or changes in its composition, I'll monkey with the language there.
Yeah.
Well, and also
we've had some good success.
And also, Tara, really, after you think about the funding, right, it is the fact that, we are an alliance district, and then there's improvement strategies being implemented as we speak, even though we're an unfunded alliance district, but we won't go there. The reality is that we are working toward making improvements. So any prospective family that's moving in that picks up this report and says, oh, geez, Thompson is an alliance district, I think from a marketing standpoint, I would want to read what they're doing to get out of that mess.
Yes, I would agree there, Melinda. And do we have that? Do we have something that we can feather in there? I assume that we do.
Well, what we feather in there is the work that we're going to do around the portrait of a graduate, and that's the point of doing all of that. So
okay.
So
we'll tie that together somehow.
Correct.
I think the revitalized downtown will bring more people into, maybe is worthy of a sentence where you're talking about funds to support the schools placed primarily on the local homeowner. The revitalization should contribute, a larger population density.
Okay.
Did we read these? Well, we've more or less covered it, but we'll read them and go on anyway. While the district's enrollment is remaining stable, the number of students who require individualized instruction is presenting challenges each year in order for the district to provide an appropriate educational program for all children in Thompson. As a result, Thompson Public Schools has been designated an alliance district, one of 33 of the state's lowest performing school districts. The graph below highlights the rising number of students with disabilities who reside in the town.
Or should say, or attend Thompson Public Schools, because they may not be coming to public schools. I don't know if that's necessary to include. It's just the IEP and 504 trend data is showing that we're taking in, even though the enrollment is stable, the number of students identified with disabilities are increasing. So I don't know if that's important data point to include there or not.
Yeah, I'll give that some thought, Melinda.
Yeah,
if you are talking about a thing that's out of your control. There is an extent to which I want to stick with things that are within our control, or if they're outside our control, to which we can posit immediate and strong mitigating solutions. So maybe, but all right, so I've got that here.
To me, it's not going to enhance the overall profile of the district.
Right. So possibly strike. I'm writing this next to my.
And then finally, when you were asking about, integrating the green and growing community, the only thing I could think of right off the top of my head was the farm to school project that we're in.
Which is fantastic. And I'd love more information about that. And again, talking about tie-ins, everything should have a through line. And part of the through line here is that the Economic Development Commission, for example, and some of the work being done in branding as well, and the Agricultural Commission and some other things, has this through line of looking at agriculture as a modern endeavor, not just something that's like a picture of a traditional row crop, billions of acres, that agriculture on a micro scale is actually a viable way to conduct business and a viable path for people to become entrepreneurs. So talking about the aquaponics would be super, super helpful in some detail, I think. It shows innovation. It ties to work that's been being done outside the school system. Yeah, so whatever kind of a real snapshot of that you want to give Melinda, I would welcome it.
Okay.
You know, and here with the district is also reaching out to local farmers to procure locally grown fruits, vegetables, meat, and dairy that can be added to breakfast and lunch menus. You know, is there a formal structure for that? Is there a state or federal program that that support that specifically that you're attached to? Let's get the details on that, because people are interested in those stories when they're there.
Okay.
You know, it's one thing for me as a person who's kind of a wonk to stand up and say, oh yes, agricultural entrepreneurship in Detroit, they're growing microgreens in warehouses, which is all true. What does that mean to Thompson? How does that become relevant for a community with a strong farming history, but that is also close to technological centers? You know, if you're going to talk about proximity and location, in many ways, the same things hold true of food system enterprises for us that hold true for higher education and economic centers. Our proximity could allow us to be a hub, sending things out as opposed to us going out to others. But that would be a concentrated effort to make that happen.
Yeah, and I don't know if that header is correct, but if you're going to want to explore the aquaponics in relation to the green and growing community, that header obviously would have to be something different.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about the header.
Yeah.
I'll make it all consistent in the end.
Okay. And then I didn't know how to end it.
That's okay. We're all here, and I would say we have at least another half an hour together. We've been going about an hour and a half to 2 hours on these. So, you know, anybody, I would say, who's been listening along and wants to toss in their 2 cents at this point, go for it. What are your observations? I would say we are ending every section with action points. But I'll leave that mostly to you, Melinda, based on, you know, what we've discussed and what we've said. You know, where's the hook? What's the exciting piece for the Thompson Public Schools here at the start of our next 10-year period? What gets you guys excited? What makes the kids excited? Where is your greatest opportunity?
So yeah, so the greatest opportunities is to implement the goals of the POG, expand on our multiple career pathways, and give kids real world learning opportunities. Those are the 3 big buckets.
I can offer
And-
two categories. Tira, go ahead. You were going to say something.
No, you go, Joe. You go. I talk too much all the time.
So what I was going to suggest is two categories of additional information. If we were in Texas, now you're going to think this is way off base, but just give me a minute to explain it. If we were in Texas and you were talking to people, they want to talk about the football stadium that's on the high school campus that has 40,000 seats to it. I think there's benefits. There's, besides the educational institution itself, there are other features to it. If you're teaching 3 languages and you include Chinese, for example, highly desirable in some of the private school systems. I don't know if that's offered. If you're talking about, you're still teaching music, you're still teaching art, what of those type of benefits would be attractive to people that you could list? Again, this is more about marketing what the school does provide. And I think there's a vast sports activities. Obviously, COVID's blown that all up this year.
Right.
But I would say that's a key part of it. I think the idea that the students are using tablets in class and more advanced type of technology than they've ever done before has certainly moved along because of COVID. The virtual learning, talking about how well established the virtual learning is, and it's become much more mature in the last 6 to 12 months. We know that. I think that's a topic as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Excellent point. Excellent point.
Joe Perotti, what about you, Mr. Language Teacher? I muted you, but you can unmute yourself. You had feedback before. Give him a minute. The other thing, yeah, so Joe brings up an excellent point, in which I've scribbled down here just in the term points of pride. What are the points of pride, the existing ones, that are unique to Thompson that, you know, we should be telling people about in our school system, even if it's a portrait of a single educator who has done something outstanding and deserves notice. You know, a single impact statement of this is what is possible here. And it was only possible because of this person, these people, these resources. What is the success story that we have to share? In terms of the sort of promotional aspect of the document. And that's, you know, we might not have that here in this session, but, you know, if we could come up with that as something to include as an illustration. And the other thing, Melinda, and this is relevant to our conference call tomorrow, if you want to talk about the potential of improving health outcomes by things like that walking school bus initiative, because we could flesh out that as an idea, even if we don't get, you know, a grant in this next 10 days, you know, submitted or approved or whatever. That is forward thinking. That shows taking initiative that also ties directly to other themes that are within this document. So maybe that's a piece that you and I could work out.
Okay.
Anybody else got anything?
I'd like to talk about the trades for a minute, even though we're not talking about Turtle-Out in it. There's such a push in developing machining resources or plumbing, electricians, and it's not just about going to Ellis Tech. What I'm saying to you is there is a regional need because of the rising defense business. We just had $46 billion to be spent down there in Electric Boat. We've got 5 or 6 major employers, defense employers here that need people in the trades. I think that if we were to emphasize how close by these resources are to push students through the trades, I think it will, even though it's not physically sitting in Thompson, I think the fact is that there's something special in this area, much different than some of the other areas in the state.
So, and to your point, Joe, we just put a lot of money into refurbing the manufacturing shop. This spring, we're hoping to really upgrade our whole dust collection system. So the shop has been completely modernized and upgraded to support manufacturing and marine trades, boat building. that kind of thing. So that's a big positive that we have going. And there's a lot of QVCC articulation agreements and moving into the world of job placement with that.
I love it. That's
Melinda, I
perfect.
think there's your point of pride right there. There's your story to tell.
Okay.
Alongside whatever improvements you're going to make to the academics and the more traditional public school educational process, this is a thing that's already begun, already in place, and we can serve these types of employers, these types of industries. Our students have the ability to be well positioned because of it. There's your story.
Okay.
Plus, we have all the AP courses with the QVCC, plus Nichols College, which is right over the border.
Oh, yeah, those students can earn a significant amount of college credit at Turtle Lot because of the articulation agreements with Nichols and QVCC and actually UConn.
In Yukon, yeah.
Okay, so again, those are points of pride, right? If I'm somebody looking to relocate to the area, or somebody's trying to come in, and I want to, if I'm the kind of person who does a lot of research, I stumble across this while I'm looking at the town's website, and I look at the education section, and I've got kids, and I want to educate them. This tells me something about the commitments that the community has made. It's along a plan. It can be described. It's very charismatic. I would say, I would say let's get those relationships described in a way that is clear and compelling. Dr. Joseph Perotti Brown, you've joined us again, sir.
I've joined us, better than ever, hopefully. I did just want to echo some of the things that I was hearing. I thought, when I read through this draft and saw this farm to school project, mentioned in that last sentence, I was like I definitely want to hear more about that. So I definitely echo that. And to what Joey Martino was saying, I think this document, while looking ahead 10 years, is also going to, can be sort of rooted in when it was written. And I think across education and across a lot of different areas as well, but we're going to start seeing the things that we did during this time because we had to, and how that is going to help us innovate as educators. And so I think that's a really important point, that we can anchor some of these specifics in, and looking forward as how we're going to make that educational opportunity for the students in Thompson that much more effective.
So in other words, what things did we do because we had to that are going to be things that we do because we want to?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Will virtual learning be the end of the snow day?
God, I hope not.
I don't think so.
To a certain extent, yes, but unfortunately, because of where we live, we're going to have power outages. So
that's true.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if you can't get on the internet, you can't have virtual learning.
That is true. So you have kids sitting at home waiting for big windstorms instead of big snowstorms.
Yeah, right.
Okay, anybody else have anything on here? Melinda, I think you and I probably do have some follow-up work together to put some of the action items together.
Yes.
But I will certainly take more commentary here, or we can wrap it. It's up to you guys.
Last thought for me is I really think you need to build out the international population of Marianapolis, that Thompson is using education as a draw. So it is bringing people to town. And I look at it from a revenue producing point of view, while it's education as a business. And I think, Marinapolis is doing a particularly good job of drawing people from all over for that purpose.
So Joe, I'll put you back, Parodi, I'll put you back on the spot there.
Yeah.
In terms of incorporating the residents of that campus into the community at large. I know it happens occasionally that they foray out. I mean, we've had some volunteerism done. But what about that? What about the idea of, yes, these people come here and they are sort of privileged and the best and the brightest because their parents are paying the money to put them into this prep school program. How do we get them to see Thompson not just as the surroundings, but the community in which they are residents for however many years they're at the school?
Yeah, and I think that's a really valuable point. Yeah, and I agree with you. I think that the predominant link so far has been through the volunteerism, whether it's through work students have done with Teague, or through work we've done with the cleaning the cemeteries or helping with the garden, right? But yeah, I think that's an interesting proposition that I don't have a good answer to right now. I was going to jump in and say, I know Joe or Martina had gotten you some language about Marinapolis to include, but of course I'm happy to help flesh anything out for that section or anything you need for that as well.
Yeah, I'll pass that back and forth between the three of us then as well once I see what Joe's provided. I mean, I guess I would posit something here, and maybe it's something to posit as an action step, since obviously you do not speak for the administration of Marinapolis Preparatory Academy. But I would toss this out to you and to Melinda, who is in the administration of the Thompson Public Schools. What is a way that these two school systems can be more symbiotic, without diluting Marinapolis's mission, but this is a campus that has a certain number of resources, and is not otherwise a part of the community. What kind of connection can we build between these institutions so that they are integrated into the community and into each other's lives, right? The students from one talking to the students from the other. So I'm gonna leave it there and maybe just draft something into the action steps at the end, and you guys can shoot it down or expand on it, improve it, whatever.
Joe, did Marinapolis participate in the student leadership that was happening last year that Turtelot hosted, and then I think Woodstock Academy hosted this year?
I think so. I'm not sure if we made it this year, but I do remember a group of students heading over to Turtelot last year.
Right, so that is a way that we're connecting through that student leadership. I can get a statement about that.
Yeah, that is great. And I know there have been some other activities, I know like, around prom season, when they've done the sort of awareness of
Right.
driving and things like that, we've gone over and shared in that programming as well. So yeah, so those are some other examples as well. Thank you for that, Melinda.
Yeah, many schools do joint career days when they have multiple schools in town.
Thank you, Joe. Good, I've got all kinds of stuff scribbled all over these pages again. Anybody got anything else? Going once? Going twice? Okay, I think we did good work here, guys. So again, this is mostly for the benefit of Kathleen and Melinda because they haven't been part of these sessions previously. So what I have been doing is taking all the notes gathered in each session, pushing them back into the draft for a second version, pushing it back out to the full working group So that's like, 15 people or so, 15, 20 people for their further comments to see what it prompts there.
Mhm.
And then it sort of goes into the draft. At the end of this month, I have to have a completed draft 1.2 essentially, and then the final draft needs to be created within those first 3 weeks of December. We are on deadline with this. It's got to be adopted by Planning and Zoning at their December meeting for statutory reasons, essentially. So that means two things. One is that it's not going to be the 400-page document that it would be if I was left to my own devices to write endlessly. Also means that some things inevitably are going to be not as fully fleshed out as we want, but we want to make sure to hit those really important, compelling points. And I think, Melinda, a lot of that's going to come down now to you and me working those stories out.
Okay.
And I'll give myself a pat on the back. I'm a pretty good language smith, so
Good.
I can definitely do a lot of stylistic work as long as I have the pieces, and that the pieces are clear. I mean, I'm pretty happy with the document thus far. The two of you are certainly invited into the remaining discussion groups on the other topics. I mean, you've been invited all along. We've got, one a week through this month, including the last day of the month, which is Monday the 30th, whatever topic that happens to be. And then that's the version 1.2 draft that we'll have the final created from. So you'll get all that stuff distributed. And Melinda, I will see you on a con call tomorrow at 1.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
Thanks, guys. Good work as always.
All right. Night.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.